Kate Winkler Dawson.
And I'm Paul Holes.
This is Buried Bones.
Hey, Kate, how are you today?
I'm great, Paul. How about you?
I am hanging in there. What's been going on?
Well, I saw this little newspaper article that said that the company you worked for, and I didn't know this, had been the company that had been able to uncover the DNA found on the knife sheath in the Idaho murders. And you were very good at keeping secrets, because I would have, I can't believe I didn't get that out of you. It didn't even occur to me. What can you tell us? I know some of this is still top secret.
Right. You know, I'm very limited in terms of what I can say about that case and Otham's involvement. I will just say that Otham was involved. Idaho State Police Crime Lab did the initial processing. And then, of course, once they got a DNA sample from the knife sheath, a part of that sample went to Otham, who was able to develop the genealogy compatible SNP profile and started the genealogy process.
Now, some of the stuff that I've read there's been a lot of kind of criticism from web sleuths about the amount of DNA that's found on, really any kind of evidence, but in this case, the sheath. And, there's not enough to test. So I wonder, in a as generic and non-top secret way as possible, can you explain, is this, how much do you need? Is this a misperception from people?
Well, obviously there was enough to test.
Okay.
Yeah, because with the law enforcement lab, they generated a profile that went up into CODIS, and then Otham was able to generate a profile. So there was enough to at least sample that DNA extract twice. Now, I can't say how much they actually got out of that sample, but modern DNA technology is extraordinarily sensitive. So we are talking on the order of like 100 picograms. Yeah, this is where I don't want to say single cell sensitive, but in essence, we are down at a level to where you have DNA from a few cells that under the right conditions, you can generate a profile and be able to forensically go after the databases, whether it be on the law enforcement side with CODIS or on the genealogy side with like GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA.
And this is where I think it gets a little tricky with all the online speculation about cases like these is, I had been reading people saying, you can't get enough on here. that's the only thing that is indicating, that Kohlberger is involved. And then of course we saw what happened, where he pleads guilty and admits to all of it. So I feel like, making assumptions where you are not properly trained and then spewing it out everywhere can be a little bit dangerous. I know it's probably exciting and fun, but still it really, to me, felt like this was too much speculation around that particular part of science.
Well, correct. And this is where like I get pulled in by various if you want to call them online, but even news type organizations to be the talking head. And I, in essence, have said, I will only comment when there's official information that is put out by law enforcement, the courts, etc. So for the Kohlberger case, the only time I commented publicly about that case was when the affidavit for arrest was issued. And I only commented about the facts that the investigator wrote in the affidavit that went to a magistrate in order to get the PC, the arrest warrant. There is so much speculation when it comes to looking at cases through whatever medium you're consuming. I will tell you just cases during the course of my career, which were covered by news organizations, where you actually have reporters or journalists that are trying to convey the facts, but because they don't understand maybe the underpinnings of the science, they write things in their articles or they say things during the news broadcast, which is factually wrong from somebody who's got the forensics background. And you're going, nope, That's not exactly what that is conveying. I even, way back during the O.J. Simpson case, I was interviewed by a Bay Area news reporter, and I saw them take an answer that I gave to one question, and they spliced in a different question and used my answer, and it was factually wrong. And I was thinking, you're making me look like an idiot. Yeah. And I don't know if that was just a mistake. They thought, oh, that answer is better with this question, or they were just trying to make something more sensational, which would be absolutely negligent. You want to report the facts. So that is where, I've got a tremendous history with, the online communities related to looking at these cases, whether it be Zodiac or Golden State Killer. And there are some amazingly bright individuals that are well-intentioned in this online sleuthing community. Mm. But oftentimes the discussions that occur and some of the conclusions or opinions that the online people form just don't correlate with the facts that are in the case file. And they don't have access to the complete case files. They're just relying upon, what was reported in the media, whether it be a TV show or a newspaper article, etc. And again, it's just where, no, you got to be careful.
Yeah, absolutely. And from the journalist's perspective, we train our students at the University of Texas. You need to go back and you don't do just your own fact checking. You should always call the people who you're interviewing and say, Paul, listen, can I go over some of the stuff that you said and make sure that I framed it correctly? And I think a lot of people don't do that. And that's really what you should do. I remember submitting something for the New York Times. I was writing an article about something, and it was unreal, the amount of fact checking that they did, and called me back and said, where did you get this source? And I was thinking, that's the vigor. I know it always isn't like that at every place, but that's what you should be looking for, especially something like this. So anyway, my whole point of this is that I was surprised when I saw it because you were so tight-lipped. So now I think the audience knows if you have a secret, a juicy secret, you can trust Paul Holes with that secret. Now I know that. I don't actually have secrets pretty much ever, but I know I can trust you now.
Everybody has secrets, Kate. Well, come on.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe, but I know I can tell you if I come up with one. So.
Yeah, but that's also part. If you take a look at where I'm at, even though I'm in this true crime genre, I am still consulting with law enforcement. Right. And if I burn law enforcement and let's say divulge something publicly that they do not want to have divulged, I'm shooting myself in the foot with my credibility moving forward as I want to continue working unsolved cases with law enforcement. So yes, I have, I consult on a lot of cases. There's a lot of information on cases, some high profile, some not, that I can't discuss. Those are facts, and I may never be able to discuss them even after the case is solved just because of some of the aspects related to the circumstances of the case. Yep.
Well, now I know. And I promise to divulge everything about this case coming up because it's a big, big case. I normally will say, this is a listener suggestion. This is multiple listener suggestions. Oh. I've heard about this. It's not Black Dahlia. I've heard about this case, for a very long time, and I had never really gotten into it. So I think that you'll find this one to be really interesting. Right. So let's go ahead and set the scene. Okay, we are back on a train. We've had a couple of train stories now, which I love. Agatha Christie loved putting people on trains and in cruise ships and trapping them in different areas. It's a mystery. So anytime I see we have a train story, I get excited. Okay, so we've talked about, you haven't had a ton of train experience. I know we talked about the Pikes Peak, I think is one of the trams that you had been on, maybe.
The COG Railway, which if you come to Colorado Springs, I highly suggest you do that, preferably in the summertime. Because when you get up to 14,000 feet, even in the summertime, it's freezing. Mm-hmm. And if it's in the wintertime, it's miserable when you step outside. But it's an amazing experience to ride up Pikes Peak and go through the forest and then get above the tree line once you get to a certain altitude. So that's in terms of riding the train. That's one. And then, of course, the Napa wine train I've been on several times.
Several times. Is there not a whiskey train, America? Do we not have a whiskey train out there?
Hey, I'm on board.
I still won't drink whiskey as much as you like to ask. I'm not going to do it.
Nope.
Anywho, we're back on a train. This is not a whiskey train or a pleasant train, frankly. This is LA, and it is 1931. So it's 7:45 in the morning. And this is a train called the Golden State Limited, which pulls into Los Angeles Central Station. And it came from Phoenix, where I had departed at 8:00 the night before. I've always dreamed of being on an overnight train. I thought that sounded very romantic. I'm not sure this is the romantic train I would be thinking. This sounds like, just sort of a typical train where you're falling asleep sitting straight up, but I don't know. But this is not a luxury train. It's my understanding. So it's coming from Phoenix, and there were 2 large black steamer trunks that were loaded onto the train when in Phoenix the night before. And nobody really knew who left the trunks. They just knew, the porters just knew they had to load the trunks onto the train, and they will become a central point here for us.
Okay.
So what I would like to do is a demo for the people watching on YouTube, because I actually have almost virtually the same type of steamer trunk behind my chair. But because I'm sitting in a Victorian chair, it's large and you can't see it. But it's a really big, mine is made of 10 steamer trunk that came from France to America in 1867. So when I talk about these trunks, I can just visualize it. It's huge and fairly lightweight, and it's got, rollers on the bottom, and this would have been pretty typical. So that's sort of what we're talking about. And I have lots of photos for this story. Okay. So the train rolls in the morning, and the porters start walking around where the carriage is that's carrying all of these pieces of luggage. There are the trunks, and they smell. And I know
it's not a good sign.
Yeah, it's not a good sign for the owner or for, the people trying to unload it. Okay. So, I know where this is heading, but I'll be dramatic and we'll talk about it in more detail. There's a large trunk and a smaller trunk. The larger trunk has been oozing. And both trunks are emitting a foul, putrid odor. And the night baggage man thinks that a passenger has tried to cross state lines from Arizona into California with contraband deer meat. And, venison smuggling was a big deal. You weren't allowed to do that. And so they're assuming, we know for our show, this is not deer meat, but that's the first assumption. They're not going to the depraved just yet. He alerts the district baggage agent to hold these trunks for further inspection. And they don't know who brought them on board just yet, but they're assuming they're going to get claimed, hopefully at some point. So this timeline to me is wild. So this train gets in at 7:45, let's say 8:00, they smell things. Now we're at noon. So we're talking about 4 hours of sitting here it's California. It's a little bit warmer. And this stuff is smelling, and nobody wants to open it because it's locked with a key. And they can't pick it. And I've tried to pick my lock because I locked it accidentally on my trunk, and I had no luck picking it. So now we're at noon, and there's a woman and a college-aged young man who approached the front office, and they say, "These are our trunks." And a clerk recognizes this guy, the college-aged young man, as Burton McKinnell. So Burton McKinnell, and he is a USC student, University of Southern California. And they recognize him because he had been kind of off and on again helping station agents load and unload baggage over the last Christmas holiday just to make extra money. And they don't know any idea who this woman is. They don't know who the woman is. So they say this smells to the man and the woman, to Burton and this woman. And they say these are just personal items. I don't know why they smell, but they're leaking. They don't have a good excuse. And there's a stain at this point on the concrete. And they might still have been thinking about deer meat contraband, but there are flies swarming. The stench is nauseating. At this point, look at your photo packet that I sent you, the PDF.
All right.
Okay. So go specifically just to number 1.
I see it. Yes. So I see a photo that has 2 trunks, one that is larger, that is laying horizontally. So it's basically laying in a position that these trunks typically would be in order to open it. And then the smaller trunk is on its end. So it's more vertical. These trunks appear to be black or very dark color with a lot of decorative beading around the edges of each face, as well as ornamental latches and hinges, and have the protective metal corner covers. So they're designed for shipping. There's no question about it. These are true steamer trunks. In this photo, both trunks are completely closed. I don't see anything indicating that there has been an attempt to open them at this point. There appears to be a sticker on the front of the larger trunk, but I can't make out whatever emblem or design is on that sticker. And then there's a man who is squatted down next to the larger trunk, who is dressed in a suit and has a hat on. And I just don't know my hats, but it's one of those. It's not a top hat. It's
like a bowler. No, it's not a bowler. It's just your standard
little hat. Yeah,
well, he's a baggage agent, so
right. He looks like he's in a position of authority. I guess that's all I can say. And it appears that he's focusing in on something on the larger trunk.
Yep. And they are growing more and more concerned because it is spilling out all over at this point. Right. So they say the district baggage agent says open the trunks, and they say we don't want to be liable for any kind of damage to the items, and so they asked this couple, but they say that the keys are at home, and so we'll leave and then we'll come back, and they let them leave because they don't have proof of anything except a stinky couple of trunks.
I think one of the questions. I think one of the questions that's got to be going through their head, if they're thinking this is, smuggled venison, it's only been less than maybe half a day, a little more than half a day since it left Phoenix. Obviously, whoever is smuggling this venison didn't package it appropriately in order to keep it preserved, so it's actually useful to whoever's going to grab it on the other end.
Yep. You're thinking like someone who's logical, not like criminal. We know criminals are dumb, thank goodness. But no. I think you're right. And then this timeline gets even longer. 4:30, they haven't come back. So, again, I go back to the timeline. They arrive at 7:45 in the morning. Now we're at 4:30. And the district baggage agent, the guy we saw in the photo, says that's it. And they call the police 9 hours afterward. And then Detective Frank Ryan comes at 5:00. He immediately recognizes the dark ooze as blood. So, and he picks the lock and he's going to open up the trunk in a second. At what stage because you guys know, come on, there's body in at least one of these trunks. But at what stage of decomp does it turn brown where you have a guy who's in his mid-40s who doesn't recognize that this nasty stuff on the concrete is blood? I mean, I guess it really does. It turns that kind of brown.
Well, blood can assume a whole spectrum of colors from the very bright red to black and anything in between. And then if you get mold growing on it or fungus, most certainly you can have different appearances that blood stain can assume. Now, if you have blood that's leaking out of this trunk, and it's not bright red, then it's sat for a while, and there, with the smell, with the flies, there is a putrefaction that has occurred. There's a decompositional process that is occurring, and it's hard to say right now, just because the blood is dark. Well, how long has it been? Or what were they actually seeing? Was this something where you have blood that is seeping due to injuries to a body inside, and then now it's leaking out through this trunk? It's not fresh. That's probably the only thing that I could conclude at this point, just due to the color. But at what stage of decomposition, I can't say just based off of the color of the blood.
Okay. So they look inside, and in the big trunk, there is a piece of a rug. There are books, there are assorted papers, and there are shreds of blood-stained women's clothing. They look under a handmade quilt, and they find the body of a dark-haired woman. Okay, so I don't have a photo of this person, the body. But I'll just describe it. So she's wearing pink pajamas. She is curled in the fetal position. And she is in a terrible, bad state of decomposition. It's hard to make out her features on her face because there's so much bloating. And this is, a whole body, unlike who we're going to discover next.
Okay, what time of year is this? It's 1931.
It is October 19th, but it has been unusually warm, both in Phoenix, which was the origination, and then in LA, which is the destination.
Right, and so these trunks, of course, have been transported from Phoenix to LA in unair-conditioned environment. So even though it's overnight, there'd be some cooling, of course, but it sounds like with the bloating, the smell, that this woman was likely dead for a period of time before being put into the trunk is what I am guessing without actually seeing the photos.
Well, maybe this next bit will clarify things for you. There is in the smaller trunk, when they open it up, they pick the lock. There are sheets of paper smeared with blood, and they are laying on top of a light cotton sheet. And there is a woman's body from the head to the navel only.
Oh, okay.
Crossed, her arms are crossed across her breasts. In the center of the trunk is where she is. On either side of the head, there are 2 bundles of women's clothing. Each bundle contains a foot and a leg, and the rest of her body is missing. This is significantly less bloated, and the police say it's because there's less fluid in her. Now, I don't know why that's the case, and we will have photos of this woman. I just didn't know when you wanted to see them.
Okay, so now when they are describing bloating, when a body decomposes, and you live in Texas and you've probably seen this, so I'm not sure you've paid much attention, but if you watch roadkill, an animal is on the side of the road, and then over the course of the next few days, you see that animal blow up like a balloon. Its legs end up sticking out sort of like a raccoon.
I've never seen that, and I hope to never see that, Paul, but thank you for that.
Start paying attention.
Oh my gosh. No, the vultures get to it, I think, beforehand. Okay. They drag a deer off the side of the road here. So anyway.
Yeah, there could be mitigating factors out there. But no, but a lot of that abdominal bloating is coming from the gases that are generated by the bacteria that are within the intestines. And so now you get a lot of these gases that haven't been able to escape yet. And so the body bloats up. And so the abdomen ends up being very distended. Here, in this case, with the part of the woman's body, well, now what you've got is you've in essence opened up the body. So the gases aren't being contained. So the bloating aspect isn't part of what that body is experiencing, because it's already been I hate to use the term popped, but in essence, that's what's happened. I've been in a morgue with a very bloated body, and the pathologist came over with a scalpel and just stabbed the abdomen, and then it was just it's just like a balloon.
Oh my God.
And
We need a disclaimer at the beginning of this somehow. Please don't be eating while we have this discussion.
But that's, I think that's, what is going on here. Versus, what did you say? They drew a conclusion that
it just, they said that the body had the second one had significantly less bloating because they had said there's less fluid, and it's because she was dismembered, and the blood must have come out at the actual scene versus this whole body in the first trunk.
Yeah, they're not factually correct, but the dismemberment is really the reason why they're not seeing the bloating. Now, I don't know if the body is showing signs of decomposition that is equivalent to the other body in the larger trunk or not. So there would be other signs that could be looked for, such as marbling through the blood vessels, skin slippage, etc., that might indicate that this dismembered body was possibly at the same stage of decomposition as the whole body in the larger trunk. But right now, I don't know.
Do you want to see photos of the body in what I will tell you is the most gruesome autopsy photos I've ever seen? And of course, we will not be putting on social media. Or do you want to hear more about what's found in other body parts and stuff like that in the other pieces of luggage? Which one first?
Well, let's complete the luggage, and then I can go and take a look at the autopsy photos. Okay.
So in these trunks, there are photos of the victims, and I'll tell you about them in a little bit. So a detective finds a green saw-edged bread knife, so serrated knife, I'm assuming, with a blade about 10 inches long, and 2 women's purses. One purse contains 3 .25 caliber shells exploded. The other purse contains a 4th shell and a spent bullet, and a few wisps of hair sticking to the bloody glass of a picture frame. And then there's more, but I don't know if you wanted to talk about that stuff first. We don't even know what killed him, right?
Right. Right now. But, this is where it gets suspicious, is that you have, in one purse, you have 3 .25 caliber cartridge cases. You use the term shell, but technically it's a cartridge case. So this is a round of ammunition that has been discharged, and the cartridge case, the shell, is remaining inside the gun, or if it's a semi-auto, it's been ejected out. So somebody's taken time to scoop up these 3 cartridge cases and put them in this purse. Now, we don't know if these cartridge cases are related to the homicide of these victims yet or not. Mm-hmm. Then you have another purse that has a .25 caliber cartridge case plus a bullet, and then you said there was some hair associated?
So in this time period, it was common for you to kind of there's like a favorite motto or a favorite phrase, and you would print it out or have it printed and then frame it. There is that kind of a frame with a motto that nobody can read because there's blood and broken glass all over it, and there's some hair sticking to the bloody glass of this picture frame. Does that make sense?
Oh, interesting.
I don't know if they were hit by that. Somebody was hit over the head with this frame, or what? How does it end up in the trunk? This seems messy.
Well, it's being placed there by, I think it's hard to say without taking a look at the photos. This is part of, processing this trunk is documenting every layer as you remove items, and this may have been an item that was in this trunk before the body was placed in there. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why it's broken. That's why it has blood, and maybe some hair got caught up, on that, or it was something that at the crime scene, where the victim's killed, whatever happened caused blood and hair to get onto this frame, if you will, and that the offender noticed and said, well, I got to clean things up, and placed it into the trunk. Who knows? There's all sorts of possibilities right now.
Okay, well, let's talk about some more discoveries before we finally leave this awful crime scene. So, they find in the inside of the in the waiting area of this train station, someone notices behind the door of the women's bathroom there are two more items. One is a woman's worn tan suitcase, and another is a hat box. And in a minute, I have photos of all four of the items together, so you can kind of see size and stuff like that. Go ahead.
Where are these found? These are found in the train bathroom area?
So in the depot, yeah. So as if someone got off the train, had these two items and left them behind the women's bathroom. Or maybe they're not connected. I mean, but they think this is weird. Why would somebody abandon these nice items?
Exactly. So you have to pay attention to it.
Yep. Okay. So there's another detective who shows up. His name is David Davidson. Okay. David Davidson. He arrives on the scene at 11:20 p.m. And so, I mean, I don't know why I think this is incredible, but it is. So what is that, 8 hours or something, almost 10 hours after this train first pulls in. In his report, he says that he opened the old tan suitcase, and there is another section of the body that had been dismembered. It is the lower female torso, so waist to knees, clothed in pink pajamas, and wrapped in a sheet and a blanket in this suitcase. And I'm going to want to see these pretty soon, because I can't imagine being able to hide somebody in a suitcase. Like, are any of these items really that big? I guess so,
Well, I don't know what size suitcase we're looking at, but a larger suitcase, if you package a lower body of maybe a smaller human, absolutely can hold. I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Okay. Let me tell you a couple more things, and then I'll show you. I think it's going to be 3 photos in a row, and then we'll get to the autopsy stuff. So this torso is missing intestines and a bladder. And in the hat box, so the torso's in the brown little suitcase. In the hat box, there is an empty surgeon's bag, which has also on the side surgical dressing, one old kit of surgeon's instruments, one .25 caliber Colt automatic pistol, several pieces of women's wearing apparel is what they called it, 40 rounds with one box, Winchester 25 automatic cartridges, and miscellaneous cosmetics. What is happening? I mean, it's just like haphazard. Throw this in here and some makeup in here along with the torso. I don't get it.
Well, I would say at this point, obviously we have 2 dead females. The offender had access to a large steamer box that an adult I'm assuming these are adult females at this point, but I don't know that they are. Okay. So the larger steamer box, he was able to place a whole body into, but now he's got another victim that in order to be able to transport, he's having to cut that victim up and distribute her body parts across the smaller steamer trunk and the tan suitcase. And my understanding is no body parts are in the hat box, right?
No body parts as far as I know are in the hat box.
So, right? so the hat box is containing what he's seeing as the evidence of the crime. He's got the pistol that at least caliber wise is matching the spent rounds found in these 2 purses, presuming those purses are each of the victim's purses. Mm-hmm. So that potentially could be the murder weapon. We don't know how these victims are killed yet, but that's a possibility. And then he's got the source of the ammo. He's got the box of Winchester 25 caliber ammo, and then the surgeon's bag. This is interesting. Does this mean that this guy actually does have medical training, or is this just something he had access to and utilized the implements in order to dismember the bodies? So he's trying to get the victim's body away from Phoenix. He's trying to get the primary items of evidence. Yeah, so he's, in essence, it sounds like he's trying to clean up a crime scene out in Phoenix. Just like, why put all this on a train and ship it? And then you have people coming to claim these items. So that's intriguing. But he's leaving some clues. There's definitely investigative leads that can be followed with this. But it's definitely an intriguing case you got here, Kate.
Well, there you go. I know. That's the goal. Paul holes, as I say often. Now, I have a question. The lower female torso that we were just talking about, waist to knees, and they say it's missing intestines and bladder.
Yeah.
Is that significant, or is that, whoops, it fell behind and I don't have time to pack it up to these two things? Well, we don't know.
Well, at this point, don't know. The bisection of this second victim, who's in the smaller trunk, don't have an accounting for what all is present within the upper part of her body. But the fact that they are saying intestines are gone, the bladder's gone, this is something that the offender, for whatever reason, did not include in the transport. Now, when you bisect a body, particularly, below the stomach level, the primary organ that you're having to deal with are these intestines, and they have a tendency to kind of be messy. And I could see where this person's going, this is going in a garbage bag, and I'm going to dump it somewhere else versus trying to package that up and try to squeeze it into the trunk. It may just be a practical reason why the intestines and the bladder just may be part of the person, going down inside the body to, in essence, remove the intestines by cutting through the rectum area, and is also taking the bladder out at the same time. I see, when you watch autopsies, you see how pathologists will go through and remove the internal organs, and they're having to go low down to where, the rectum and the bladder are in order to access those organs.
But what kind of person dismembers? I've never understood that. I can understand almost every type of murder. What is it called? Extenuation? What's the word where you drain the blood?
Exsanguination, I think is how you say
it. That's it.
Exsanguination.
I somehow can wrap my head around all of that, but not somebody who can dismember, who's, not a surgeon or somebody who's trained, and we don't know what that is, but it just seems like a totally different mindset to me.
Well, it's a mindset. I think for most offenders that resort to dismemberment, they are in a mode of self-preservation, and they're trying to get rid of this body. I have a case, the Helzer case out in Concord, California, and an elderly couple, and then the girlfriend of one of the offenders. They were horrifically dismembered, but they were dismembered using like power saws. And, the legs are being cut off at the thigh level. There was no careful dissection that is occurring at all. And that was literally to package them up in smaller duffel bags and dump them in the Delta. I think for most, that dismemberment is just a practical aspect to be able to transport bodies, and some have the stomach to be able to handle that. Some may have some experience, whether they're butchers, medical training, are hunters dealing with, dressing animals, or serial predators that grew up torturing animals and dismembering those bodies. So they have sort of a comfort with dealing with that. But then you also have offenders that resort to dismemberment, and they're going off and throwing up during the dismemberment process.
Well, I hope that's the case here. I mean, I remember the woman, I had forgotten we had this train case too. Maybe we've done more than I thought. Remember the woman who carried a head it wasn't a hat box, but it was, like a blanket wrap kind of, like caddy almost. And she carried this head onto a train and sat there forever, and then dumped the head in a creek nearby after one of the stops. And I just thought, wow, I don't know how you can disconnect like that, but you're right. I mean, self-preservation, I guess. You're right.
That's exactly it.
Okay. I have the boring photos, which I know you want to see. So if you look at, you like all photos, if you look at pages 2, 3, and 4, do not go to 5, Paul.
Okay.
2, 3, 4, you see the bag, the hat box, and then you'll see the stuff that was inside one of the bags. It looks like it's a corset is one of the things in there. And then you'll see the whole grouping of stuff that was brought on board.
Yeah, so the photo of the hat box, this is a photo showing this circular case with the lid open. The case looks like it's on the order of maybe 8 to 10 inches deep. I'm surprised at sort of the inner cloth that's inside this case. It's got like a pocket that's been put into the lid. So, I mean, this is a fairly nice travel case, if you will, for smaller items. You know, they're calling it a hat case, but you could definitely use this to transport all sorts of things. You know, and I imagine, you know, looking at these steamer trunks and this hat case, these weren't cheap items. This does not look like riffraff type of items. You know, these look like somebody who is willing to pay decent money for, you know, for travel purposes. Mm-hmm. Inside, you know, in this photo of the hat case, there is one of the purses. And you said that there looked like there was a corset in it.
Look at the photo on page 3.
Oh, on page 3.
I think that's a corset. And then it looks like there's some bullets posted up above. This looks just like a dump of all the evidence they found. I see a shoe on that second one, a jacket maybe.
Okay, so
it's like somebody packed to go to Vegas and just left quickly or something.
Yeah, no. First, you commented about these bullets. Mm-hmm. So that's actually a display of different calibers of bullets that are often found in laboratories, particularly back in the day. So what you'll see these bullets mounted on this board, and they have a number associated with them. And then over to the right, you see the number, and it's going to be the sort of the brand of the bullet, the caliber of the bullet, etc. Mm-hmm. So this would be like a reference chart that a firearms examiner back in the day would use and go, oh, this 25 caliber matches this make and model of bullet. So
sometimes they wouldn't automatically say, oh, that's definitely a 25 or that's definitely a 45. They would sometimes need a chart.
There's measurements that they would take. You know, some of these bullets, when they're used in shootings and recovered out of a victim's body or from a crime scene, are deformed. And so they have to weigh the bullet. Do they have all the bullet? They have to pay attention. Is it just a lead bullet? Does it have jacketing on it? What kind of jacketing? Does it have any knurling? There's all sorts of characteristics that they would use to try to identify, you know, the make of that particular bullet as well as the caliber. And so that's what we're seeing here. But kind of in the foreground is, you know, other items of evidence. And you mentioned what would be described as a corset, which I'm assuming is this white object, clothing item that's in front.
I think, but I'm not sure. And I didn't read that on the description. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I couldn't identify. It's obviously an item of clothing, but it appears that there are some blood stains on it that appear to be drops that have hit this item at an angle based off of the, you know, these little pointers of the blood on the edges. And in the photograph, a couple of these blood drops obviously hit this item, whether it be but they were projected or this item just happened to be grazed by these blood drops from right to left. And then I see the shoe. There appears to be maybe a jacket with fur collar or fur something. And then other items appear to be piled. You know, it's actually on butcher paper. So they have removed these items from one of the cases. I don't know which case. And laid it and dumped them on this butcher paper. This really isn't the way that you would document things. It's kind of a pile.
1931 detectives are doing the best they can, Paul.
Yeah. So anyways, okay. And then the next item, the next photo is just the 2 steamer trunks, and I'm assuming the tan suitcase.
Yep.
And we haven't described.
That's a lower torso is where that was in that smaller suitcase.
Yeah. What's interesting with this photo, I've already described the 2 steamer trunks, but you can see all the scratches. These steamer trunks are well traveled. They're not brand new. They have been used in just normal daily life by whoever owned them. And then the tan suitcase, it's harder to say what it is composed of. It almost appears that it might have like a leather type exterior with, again, the metal protective corners, as well as what appear to be leather straps, which might be used to help hold the suitcase closed in case, the latches fail or something. But it also has extensive wear to it. This did not happen just on the train from Phoenix to LA. This suitcase is also well used.
Well, don't go any further than that. Let me tell you about the autopsy of the first woman who was in the fetal position. I don't have photos of her. I told you we'll have photos in a second of the other woman. So the LA's chief autopsy surgeon is a guy named Dr. A.F. Wagner. So we'll just say Dr. Wagner. He conducts the autopsy, and he says that the woman in the larger trunk was killed from a single contact wound to the head. And the muzzle of the gun had been held so close to her left temple that there were powder burns around the entrance wound. And later, a ballistics expert would also testify that the bullet had been fired downward and backward. There were no other bruises or scratches or nothing else with her body. And they identify her as a 32-year-old woman named Agnes Ann Leroy. And we're going to call her Ann.
Ann? Okay. All right. And where is this contact wound to her head? Is it in the temple, the forehead?
It said it had been held so close to her left temple that there were powder burns around the entrance wound. But what is the downward and backward? So kind of standing over her from behind?
So the downwards and backwards is relative to her body in the anatomic position. Everybody has seen sketches where you have a human body that is standing upright, arms are out, palms facing forward. And so the pathologist is looking at this trajectory. And when it's downwards, it indicates that it's going from high to low within her head. And backwards is from front to back. Now, we can't position the shooter relative to the victim because we don't know the position the victim is in at the time she was shot. Is she standing up? Is she bent over? Is she sitting? Is she laying on her side? So the downwards and backwards is just a trajectory through her head at this point in time. The contact wound to her left temple. This is, what we see in executions where the gun, the muzzle of the gun, the front of the barrel is pressed hard up against the victim's head, and then the shot is fired. What ends up happening is not only does the bullet go into the victim's head, but all the gases from the firearm's discharge go inside the head. And oftentimes those gases, if it doesn't exit, if there isn't an exit wound where the gases can escape on the other side of the head, they will escape out that entrance wound. And so you'll see this tearing of the scalp or around the entry wound. That's the gases escaping out the entry wound. And the powder burns, because it's so close. Now what you have is you have the singeing of the tissues. You have possibly fractured hair because of the gases, the shock. We're talking, when you start talking firearms, this is truly what we call an explosive level force. So hair will shatter. And so it's not uncommon to have shattered hair adhere to the gun or be found on the shooter's sleeve, as an example. And you could potentially, and of course, there's potential gunpowder, both partially burned as well as unburned gunpowder, being found within the entry wound.
Ugh, gosh.
And the reason her head is intact is because this was a low-powered weapon. It's a .25 caliber. If this had been something like a .357, her head would have been blown open.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the second woman, because we will have photos. So let me just tell you what they say in the autopsy, and then you can see the photos. She had also been shot, the woman in the trunk. Her name is Hedvig Sammy Samuelson. So we're going with Sammy. She's
Thank
20.
you.
She's 20. I know. I want you to say Hedvig. She is 24. And
Okay.
we'll learn about them in a little bit. So she had also been shot. One bullet entered her left chest and lodged in her left arm. A second bullet penetrated the ring finger of her right hand. And a third bullet was shot into her left temple at close range. And the third bullet is the cause of death. There is also a superficial puncture wound in her left side of her neck. It's not clear what the instrument would have been, who knows, but it was flimsy. So it could have been something in, the small trunk or in the medium-sized trunk. I don't know. Dismemberment, according to the surgeon who did the autopsy, had taken place within hours of death. And that is what we know medical-wise about what happened to these two women.
Yeah, as far, in terms of the gunshot wounds, she has an entry into her left chest, but the bullet is found lodged in her left arm. So this is a round that enters into her chest, exits, and then goes into her arm. This is a common thing that it really, all it does is just indicate her arm is in wherever the exit wound was in the path of that bullet after it exited out her chest. Mm-hmm. The right ring finger having a bullet impact to it. Mm-hmm. That may be because she's in a defensive posture. It may not be, but that's something that we do see when, somebody has a gun pointed at them, they put their hands up, and now when the shots are fired, their hands end up getting hit by the rounds. Mm-hmm. And then she's executed. She's got the gunshot wound to the left temple, just like the first victim. Now, they're not describing it as a hard contact, right?
That's not what I saw. No, not hard contact.
Okay. But it's probably a very close shot. And so she's executed as well. But for whatever reason, it appears that she's aware she's being shot, and she is reacting to that shot before she's executed. The first victim isn't showing that at all. It just shows that, so, is it possible to sequence these shots? And this is just speculation. There's no hard science, if you will, in terms of this reconstruction. But with the first victim, no reaction, no defensive posture wounds or anything like that. So it's possible you have these two women, maybe both, asleep or both awake, whatever. First victim is executed, and then the second victim notices this, and now she's reacting and is now getting shot, and it's taking multiple shots because she's moving. And then now the offender is able to come up and execute her as well.
Well, the time is here. Let's go ahead and look at the photos. There are quite a few of them. So you're starting on page 5. This is Sammy, the woman who was dismembered. And, feel free to give just enough information. These are terrible. And this did remind me of the Black Dahlia photos from the scene there too. I don't think I want to look at them anymore.
So, the first page of the photos is showing 3 photos of Sammy. And I'm going to kind of go in a counterclockwise manner with the photos as they're displayed on the page. So the upper right photo is Sammy's upper torso, which it looks like she is maybe right at the belly button level. That's where she has been bisected. So her lower body was removed from the belly button level downwards. So this photo is showing her upper body, including her head, laying somewhat on the left side, but mostly on its back. Both arms are present. She's nude, and in essence, her face doesn't look very disturbed. I think what's surprising to me is the lack of blood. So I don't know if this is after she's been cleaned up by the coroner's office, or if this is how she's found. She looks very fresh. She does not look very decomposed at all. I see the entry gunshot wound to her left chest, which is actually quite high up. I would say it's maybe 2 inches below her left collarbone. And if that is actually found in her left arm, this is a shot that is going from her upper breast area and then is exiting probably around through her armpit area, maybe a little lower, and then is found embedded in her upper arm. But really devoid of any other types of, major injuries that I can see. There's no stab wounds. There doesn't appear to be anything to indicate severe beating. She has some discolorations in her face, but I can't tell what exactly those are. And then the next photo is her lower body, which is in essence from roughly her belly button level down to her knees. And this is showing the wound that was used to cut the lower body off. As you had mentioned, the pathologist had noted, or there's the lack of the intestines and bladder in this lower body, as well as in the upper body. So the offender is purposefully getting rid of those, and is not including those within the suitcase. There is also a very large incision to her right hip that starts literally at the upper part of the hip and then goes down into her groin area. I would say that that's the offender initially considering removing her right thigh.
Okay.
And abandons doing that, and then ends up just keeping this whole versus further dismembering it. And it's possible maybe he decided that he was going to do the whole leg first and thought, no, this is going to be too hard going through the hip, and then he goes down to the knees and cuts through the knees, which would be a much easier process to do. But it looks like he, at the knee level, he's going through the joint, and he's not like trying to saw through the long bones of the legs. And then the photo below that is also the lower body, as I just described, sitting on its right side next to the smaller steamer trunk. And so I'm assuming they're just trying to show the origin of where this lower body was found. And then below that is the next page, and this is just showing Sammy's body parts being pieced together, both her laying on her back as well as her laying on her left side. It appears that her entire body, except for the intestines and bladder, look like they're accounted for. And the lower legs are in the photo in the upper left-hand corner of this page, and it's just showing the wounds where the offender cut through the knees, and it's pretty obvious looking at some of the fat layers, subcutaneous fat layers. There's no hemorrhaging during this incision, so she's dead at the point that her lower legs have been removed.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
What does all of this say to you about the killer, who we're now going to try to figure out the identity of? Is this somebody who's strong, physically strong, to be able to do all of this?
No, yeah, this, in terms of, the dismemberment process, again, is really for convenience of transport. It's a lot easier to transport smaller body parts than a whole body. And in this case, the offender chose to use steamer trunks and suitcases, in order to fit the body parts in. So he just had to get Sammy's body small enough to fit within the items that he had available for transport. The first victim is not cut up because he had a larger steamer trunk. He probably would not have dismembered Sammy if he had another large steamer trunk, but he didn't. That's what that tells me. Now, the offender, of course, had to move these steamer trunks, and Sammy, I'm guessing she is not overweight. I don't know how tall she is, maybe 120 pounds. And of course, we don't have photos, but she's in the large steamer trunk. So you have a whole body in there. So I'm going to say, let's say another 120 pounds. So now the offender has about 240 pounds worth of body between the two bodies to move around. He could do that singularly, or maybe he has some help moving these steamer trunks and the suitcase. I would say he doesn't need help. He just has to, travel with the suitcases to get it to the train and get them on the train. The suitcases probably aren't anything unusual in terms of their weight relative to other steamer trunks, that are being put on there that may have other, a lot of paper in them or something like that. The dismemberment does not indicate anything about the offender. His physical characteristics. You could have a woman doing this. This is, there's nothing that I can discern from that. The way that these bodies are dismembered, as we have talked about on numerous occasions, it doesn't necessarily indicate that the offender had any medical training. The only thing that gives me pause is the fact that there is a surgeon's bag, if you will, but that anybody could potentially possess something like that.
Absolutely.
So, right now, it's wide open. It's just the offender. The puzzling aspect is, why is the offender killing these two women and then transporting them on a train out to L.A., and then you have a woman and a college-age kid coming to claim the steamer trunks? I mean, there's a clue somewhere in there.
Well, let's talk about Anne and Sammy and how they knew each other, and that'll probably be helpful. They were good friends. They met in Alaska. Anne was a nurse and Sammy was a teacher. In 1931, they both moved to Phoenix and rented a cozy little duplex on North 2nd Street, just on the outskirts of town. Anne was divorced twice. And she was also an X-ray technician at a local clinic. And now we're going to talk about 1930s. Sammy was what is called a lunger. And I've heard this phrase before. This is someone who had tuberculosis, who came to Phoenix in hopes that the Arizona heat, the dry heat, would help with the illness. So she came there to get better. She had tuberculosis. Okay. So at 8 o'clock, sometime in the evening of when these trunks were discovered, while detectives in LA are collecting evidence at the train, and of course the autopsy's gone on, policemen in Phoenix investigate this duplex, which they would call, disgustingly in the press, the murder cottage. In the bedroom, there are 2 rings of blood near the door. Anne's bed, so there's one bedroom. Anne's bed is on the north wall of the room. Sammy's bed is on the south wall of the room. Detectives find blood splattered under Anne's bed, dotting the floor and splashed onto the baseboards, but the walls are clean. There is no blood on or around Sammy's bed. Both mattresses are missing. And the one photo I have that would be helpful is of the hallway with very deep scratch marks of where it sounds like the trunks were being dragged across. So presumably somebody who has access to this apartment. Let me just say one more thing about this area. There was a corner of a bedroom rug that had been crudely hacked with a pair of surgical scissors, they say. They, of course, compare this chunk of rug to the one in the trunk that they found, and it matches. They find a bloody thumbprint on the window shade. Looks like someone left while pulling down the shade, this fingerprint. Phoenix police fingerprint 3 ginger ale bottles, which had been found next to a partially consumed bottle of whiskey in an icebox refrigerator. And it is unsecured. This whole crime scene. Reporters are milling around. I mean, not shocking for this time period. Reporters are milling around. And the next day, the landlord begins selling tours of the apartment for 10 cents a head.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So what do you think? The ginger ale I thought was interesting,
Sure. Well, the most interesting thing, of course, is the bloody thumbprint.
Mm-hmm.
If that actually is blood from one of the victims, then that's going to be, very critical in terms of identifying who the offender is. Now, the ginger ale bottles, the bottle of whiskey that is found, is this, are Sammy and Ann entertaining somebody?
Mm-hmm.
Did they have somebody over and then something goes sideways and now they're killed? And so do you have potentially offender prints on the ginger ale bottles? Of course, today would be looking for DNA as well as the whiskey bottle.
Mm-hmm.
This is where now it's, did either Sammy or Ann drink whiskey? I know you don't.
And yet you're still friends with me. Thank you, Paul.
I know, But so, this, even though, the photos of Sammy at autopsy are showing her unclothed, initially when her body was found as well as Ann's body is found, it indicates at least they had pink pajamas on. At least with Sammy, the lower part of her body had the pink pajamas on. So, is that indicative that there isn't a sexual aspect to the case?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I wouldn't necessarily draw a firm conclusion, but they had gotten ready for bed.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that 2 mattresses are gone out of this apartment suggests to me that each victim was killed in their own bed, and the offender is seeing blood on each mattress, and that's why those mattresses are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then how does the offender get those mattresses out of this condo complex? Mm-hmm. Are those just found in the dumpster to the complex, or does the offender have a vehicle there? And that's something that he takes to, the landfill or whatever, some restaurant dumpster. But he's also cleaning up the crime scene and, in essence, taking the victims' bodies and the smaller items from the crime scene, packaging them up and shipping them out to LA. It's so bizarre.
It is. I'll tell you a little bit of evidence that Phoenix police, as they're searching for physical evidence, there is a vacant lot miles from the North 2nd Street duplex. They find one of the missing mattresses. It's clean.
Okay.
Clean.
Oh.
Nothing on that mattress. At the duplex, they find bloodstains in the bathroom. So everything had been in the bedroom until now. Bloodstains in the bathroom and a mop handle in the garbage. And they think that the mop had been burned after Sammy's body had been dismembered in the bathtub. So that's what they think happened. And I had wondered about that too. Also, before you react to that, I want to ask you about the timeline. Her train, the train that was going from Phoenix to LA was I think, what did I say? It was an 8:00 train, 8:10 that night. So it's October and it could be still light outside, a little bit dusky. I don't know how long it would take to do all of this. The mattresses being deposited places, the dismemberment. Does it make sense that this might have happened the night before the train happened?
I would say the homicides occurred the night before. Mm-hmm. Who knows when the dismemberment happened. this is where now the offender has killed these two women. And right now I'm just going to use the term offender very generically. I can't say it's one offender or more than one offender, but you have a single gun that's been used, right? So they are killed sometime that nighttime before, whether it be the day before or it's after midnight and it's the same day. But the offender is now, he's calculating, how do I get away with this? And does he leave and come back? Are these steamer trunks something that belong to these women? And so he's utilizing what's present at the crime scene, or does he bring something from his own residence in order to get rid of the victim's body and the other items of evidence? So that's a very significant aspect to this case. Who do these steamer trunks, the tan suitcase, the hat case belong to? But the clean mattress is found in a vacant lot a distance away. The offender has access to a vehicle. Now, why is this mattress even being removed from the condo? It's not to get rid of blood evidence. So that mattress is being used for another purpose. That mattress may have been used to cover up things inside the offender's vehicle. Could have been used to maybe kind of stuff. Let's say he's got the back of a pickup truck and now he's putting this, the various objects on top of a mattress, and creating a sandwich to hide things. There's so many possibilities, but there's no reason for the offender to have removed a clean mattress from the condo. And I always say, anytime the offender does something that is not necessary to commit the crime, why is the offender doing that? So that's a pretty significant thing right there. He's taking time to burn the mop that he's using to mop up evidence. And they must see some evidence that Sammy had been dismembered in the bathtub. And that's pretty typical. That's where a lot of dismemberments occur. So he's spending some time, after the fact, in terms of packaging the victim's bodies, getting the steamer trunks, suitcase, the hat box, and then he gets them loaded into a vehicle. He cleans up the crime scene and he gets things transported out to the train. And he's also now, at least with the one mattress, he's taking the time to dispose of it. And we can't say he disposed of that before or after he gets the victims up onto the train. Don't know at this point what the sequence is. So, but he's spending a fair amount of time trying to cover his tracks. And again, I'm using the term he just generically. I'm not drawing a conclusion as to the gender of the killer just yet.
Well, that was quite smart of you, Paul. Because Burton and his female friend are both persons of interest. They identify the woman. This is not his girlfriend or older friend. This is his sister. She's 26. And her name is Winnie Ruth McKinnell Judd. And anyone who's into historical true crime, like myself, knows this name. Winnie Judd is kind of I think one of the more famous murderesses, as they would call her. She actually becomes known as the trunk murderess. She is their recent ex-roommate. And she has a story to tell. And now hold on, because this is we've got a part two. Just simmer down, Pepper. We've got part two coming up here.
All right, I'll restrain myself.
She and Burton are in the wind. The police are trying to find them. They find out that she once lived with these two women. She has a very complicated story. She will be tracked down. And her explanation for all of this is something that I think you'll find very interesting.
All right. Well, I'm on pins and needles, Kate.
Good. I'll see you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.